Well, we're coming to your city. Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song. We'll all be flying higher than a jetliner. And if you want a little bang in your yin-yang, come along.
Come on along, welcome aboard. And here we are coming to you as always from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios on this Tuesday. Kevin Brockway in as always. Jim Coyle here. We'll be joined by Mike DeCourcy, the king of all written media from the Sporting News, from the Big Ten Network and Fox and Chronic Hoosier later as well. Plenty to talk about. Lots of things going on. The NFL draft is, what is that, Thursday?
Thursday is the first round anyway, and then you go Friday.
I've got to check with Matt to make sure that we're going to be able to have Matt Taylor on this week, because that's when he usually comes on Thursdays, and he may be draft bound by then. So I may have to see if we need to get him on tomorrow. But as far as the draft goes for Indiana players, it's just Jamar Johnson and I'm familiar, but Jamar Johnson especially, both of those names have risen, but Jamar continues to rise up that list, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, could be a second-day pick. Could be one of those top 100 picks. I think Pro Football Focus has them somewhere in the 50s and the 60s. So we will see, but, it comes down to need, or it comes down to, one scout really falling in love with you. And I think in Jamar's case, I think there's a lot to like just because of the versatility, just because that he's a safety with cover skills, and he's got
hybrid skill. It's that hybrid, man. Everything's about being a hybrid in sports today. Hybrid stretch four, hybrid hybrid tight end receiver. We talk about positionless basketball, but I was watching something with yesterday, and daggone it, Brandon Marshall was on there.
Yep.
Wide receiver, tight end. I mean, dude can play either. There's a lot of hybrid positions in football. The fullback. Fullback does not exist anymore, but sometimes there are tailbacks that you sure think would have been a fullback. Sports have gotten more compact. We talk about positionless basketball, like I said. Some teams don't go that route, but it is there. Baseball, of course, has nothing to do with size. So it's funny how the major sports have changed to where size is not the dominant feature.
Versatility, I think that's the key to everything. Being able to play multiple positions, being able to do multiple things. If you can, and I think that's what makes Jamar attractive, is the fact that he could probably convert into a corner if it doesn't work out for him at safety, because he's got those coverage skills. And we saw that in the Gator Bowl with the anticipation and the return for a touchdown against Tennessee in that game. And, he followed that up with a bunch of picks this past year, all Big Ten first-team safety. So I think he's in a pretty good position, a pretty good spot. And, what was his vertical leap was really good at Pro Day in the upper 30s, I think, 39 or 40. So, he's got that athleticism that you like at that position and in the secondary. And, I think it'll serve him well, wherever he ends up and whatever team gets him. I think it's going to get a guy that, might not be an impact guy right away. He might have to start the special teams route, but I think eventually will be kind of a valuable piece in the secondary because of his ability to play multiple places.
Yep. Other news. Let's see. Kim Mulkey talked about this yesterday. The long time successful women's Baylor basketball coach heading back home to LSU, which I found a little ironic, but I guess for her, it's just her going home. But you're going home to a school that to me is the bastion of cheating in all of college athletics, maybe in all of sports, for that matter. They are currently now facing there's multiple investigations opened up against LSU. Now a suit has been filed with multiple defendants alleging that they have ignored, and there's a bit of conspiracy to cover up things committed by, I think, the football program mainly. It's just LSU, and of course we've got Will Wade there. LSU is constantly a perpetual cheating machine. And this goes back to I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, Brad.
Politically in Louisiana.
Huey Long.
Yes. I mean, it is. They just didn't stop. I mean, buddy, they just keep rolling. Les Miles. Let's throw Les Miles in here. The football coach prior to Coach Ed Orgeron. He was allowed to stay on after an investigation in 2013, allowed to stay to 2016, although after 2013 was not allowed to be around females alone. How in the hell? It's crazy. They had all this information in 2013. I don't see that there's any way LSU does not just get destroyed civilly in this suit, that they don't get destroyed by the NCAA with Will Wade. And there has to be a ton of crap going on with football. It's just a mess there. And boy, they just like yesterday I saw Kim Mulkey one out. Hey, Coach O. Hey, Coach, I got respect for you. Rah, rah, rah. It's a shame to see that just a lack of caring. It just seems to me it's like, hey, we don't care.
They had a women's basketball scandal a decade ago too with Pookie Chapman.
Shocker! I'm shocked.
Being involved with one of her players in an inappropriate manner. So they have a lot that's going on there. The one thing about Louisiana and LSU, and I used to cover the SEC, so I've been to Baton Rouge before and know a lot about that state. Is there is just some unbelievable athletic talent in that state. In terms of basketball players, football players. There was one year in 2006 when LSU was in the Final Four where they had their entire starting lineup was in a 30-mile radius of campus. They had kids from Baton Rouge, Denham Springs, right there. So, it's such a fertile area for talent, and a lot of those kids want to stay home. You wonder why they have to resort to cheating because there's no other, Louisiana Lafayette has gotten a little better, or the University of Louisiana is known now, and La Tech, but you don't really have that much, in terms of the state. Like everyone wants to go to LSU. That's kind of where it's at over there. So it's an interesting culture there, and it's just kind of a shame that they kind of, just really have a disregard for NCAA rules in a lot of sports that they have over the years, and the great college baseball there too, obviously. With Skip Bertman, and that's a program that they've pretty much done it the right way. They haven't really had too many scandals in baseball over the years.
Another move for Indiana basketball, as everyone is commenting on, Mike Roberts to Cincinnati. Let's see, Jennifer, I put up a minute ago. She asked, do you think that he was encouraged to go? No. And Forrest, I think what Forrest said, he thinks that he wants to be a bench coach. I think he wants to be a coach, not an administrator. And Indiana was just not going to let him go. He was an IU guy on top of it. So they're like, hey, you know what? We're going to come in here and do this right. But we're not going to screw anybody. The only person they really wanted to get rid of was Archie Miller and I'd say Tom Ostrom. But he wants to be a coach.
Yeah.
And not an assistant to an administrator. He's not even close to being a coach in that role. So he legally can't coach in that role. So he loses traction recruiting as a coach. He wants to stay in that role, obviously, and you can't recruit from that role he's in. So he would lose a tremendous amount of traction recruiting with the relationships that he's built, the guys right now, even if he's just out for 2 years. Man, especially in today's game, hell, that might as well be 5 years. 2 years is 5 years now because of the portal and everything changes so fast. So, yeah, he wants to be a coach. Obviously, I'm guessing just because I'm agreeing with Forrest by that move. He wants to be on the bench. He wants to maintain his recruiting contacts and continue to move up because coaching is what he wants to do. I personally, I don't know. I may have stuck in that role behind Thad Matta and said, I'll move up in this role. A lot more job security probably, but hey, it is what it is. And I think that it's good for him. So
Wes Miller has had a lot of success, and he worked under Wes at UNC Greensboro. So I think it makes sense from that perspective too. There's that connection there. And since he's a good basketball job, it's a good basketball school. I mean, it has been since the days of, Bob Huggins and, Brandon obviously had his issues, but Mick Cronin was very successful there. So I think it's a good landing spot for him, and I think it's a good place where in the American Athletic Conference now, it looks like Houston with Kelvin Sampson is really kind of taking over that conference. But I think Cincinnati with Wes Miller can kind of get back in the mix and compete a little bit, and Mike can be a part of that. And it's not not that dramatic a move. I mean, Cincinnati's an hour and a half down the road, so not like you're moving your family across country or anything like that.
Did you see Liverpool? I know not a lot of people listening here cares about Liverpool soccer, but they announced a pre-tax loss. This is of $64 million for the year ended last May with the COVID crisis hitting their clubs in the final quarter in the Premier League. That's how big soccer is. That's just for the last quarter. So there's a number for you.
But no, that'll be interesting to see too. And it seems like professional and college teams here are they're still spending. They're spending money when they have to. And I think there's
who was it that just stopped? Purdue. Purdue yesterday announced a halt in construction on stadium renovations to Ross-Ade Stadium. That's the reason they gave, that they didn't seem that it would be right to go forward with that in this climate. But I think we're climbing out of the climate, and I think that you still have to build for the future. I'm not telling them what they should or shouldn't do. I don't know what their finances are and all their setup, so I'm not judging in any way. But I think Indiana, they're going to have to get through this season. If Indiana has a successful season in football this year, where they get crowds, if they're allowed to, if the people show up, Indiana has to continue to put resources in football, because football is still the money-making sport in college athletics. And I know at Indiana, basketball drives the train, but I'm telling you, if you can get a successful football program, it changes your athletics program. And Indiana is so far behind still in facilities as far as football. That stadium is one of the smallest stadiums in the Big Ten, and they don't fill it. The press box is horrific. It is from the 60s. They have some suites upstairs, but those are not true luxury suites. Those are whatever it is, the president's room, all that crap. Everybody has a modern day press box in the Big Ten virtually. I'm not counting the teams that aren't our Big Ten teams, Rutgers and all those guys, but Purdue, Nebraska, look at them. They span the side of the stadium. They're filled with luxury suites. There are people in Indianapolis. There are people that would fill those. Indiana's got to go there next. I understand why they haven't yet. They've had no reason to. Now they have that impetus. I think that they have to get through this season first, Kevin, to show that they can do that, though.
Well, I think, and beyond the press box and luxury suites, those are nice, but I think that they should do something with Mellencamp too and expand it and make it into a kind of a true standalone football facility as well, because that's important for recruiting and bells and whistles.
Well, then they would have to build another facility.
Well, I think they could. I think
for other teams.
Yeah, I think Well, I think you can build around, or you could just keep that football weight room in the stadium for other teams as well. But I think that having a separate football facility
absolutely
would be prudent for them. Within the next 5 years to kind of build off that.
All major programs do.
A lot of major programs do, and Indiana doesn't. And they were so far behind, and I understand. And Fred Glass took the philosophy of building within the stadium, but I think you need something a little bit more substantial, like a kind of a separate facility there to keep up with the Joneses in the Big Ten.
Well, while most of those programs to try to get up in front, Nebraska, Purdue, use that Big Ten money to do that. Indiana was able to use some of it, but unfortunately some of it was siphoned off for other things. But hey, we got to take a quick.
But here's the other interesting thing: new president Pamela Whitten. We'll see what her philosophy is, and new administration. That's going to be interesting to monitor going forward, to seeing her philosophy on athletics and how much resources are poured into it, because it's a race. It is. It definitely is, and Facilities are a big part of recruiting. They are. But to Tom Allen's credit, he's found another way to do it by building that family atmosphere. I remember when I first interviewed him 2 years ago, he just talked about that. When I asked him about the facilities questions, he said, yeah, he goes, but, we try to promote a family atmosphere here. We try to, compensate in other ways. And they make investments in the strength and conditioning program, their coaches. They always have. And that's been a way too. Player development has been another way that they've managed to sell on the recruiting trail, and it's worked, and it's gonna that's why I think the draft this week is important, and all these drafts are important because of that. You can sell guys going forward.
Well, we got to hit a break. The Honorable Mike DeCourcy waiting for us in the wings. He's coming up next here on Indiana Sports Beat, and we're back with more brought to you by Andy Moore Honda. Hey, Hoosier fans, whether you're looking for a new hello, Mr. Mike.
How are you?
Mike.
I'm great, sir. How are you?
Kev, what's going on?
We get to see your face this week. How about that?
Ever since we started using the computer, it works out better.
Why not? How about that?
Bought my producer a ton of new equipment, so he should be good to go as well. Are you a golfer, Mike? I know I probably asked you that.
I love playing, but my back doesn't love it. So
do you play?
I usually don't. I try to stay away from playing now.
Okay. The only reason I asked is because I have occasion to go to French Lick pretty often, and actually ended up having 2 blank spots this weekend because Kravitz was going Friday, and then they made Grigson available, and he had to cancel. And then Leskowski was going Saturday, and he thought it was going to rain, and he was right because we only played 9 holes.
Well, I appreciate the offer. It's very kind.
I'm celebrating the Nets being the top spot. I got my New Jersey Nets hat on.
There you go.
I told Kevin he's going to have to invest in some hats that he got post being 12 years old because he's digging those out the bottom of his dresser, it looks like, man.
I will say, Kevin, that a week ago, Jim and I were wearing Reds gear on the air.
That's good.
And the Reds then went out and lost something like 7 consecutive games. So I'm not saying it's a curse.
Yeah. Don't have it on today, man.
Weeks ago, right? And they were giving me a hard time on the air, and they said, "Get that goofy Mets cap off." Yeah.
I saw Johnny Cueto pitching the other day. I didn't know he was still in the league. I was like, man,
Cueto, man, yeah.
Where is he now?
San Fran, right? Isn't he? Giants.
I think so.
Is he still there? Okay.
Yeah.
Still look the same. Man,
he's got.
Who was the guy the Reds traded? Not a pitcher last year that got into the fight with Pittsburgh that just ran right into their dugout. Man, I think he was I think he was an outfielder.
Puig, Puig.
Yes.
Oh, there you go.
Wasn't he traded actually before that game?
Come back. We offer an up-close animal encounter with elephants and giraffes, lodging that is out of this world, world-class golfing, and a premier resort experience that is waiting for you on your next visit to French Lick, West Baden.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sellersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry. Welcome back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios on this Tuesday. Kevin Brockway sitting in as he does, and we're joined by the great Mike DeCourcy. He joins us each week from the Sporting News, senior writer from the Sporting News, Fox and BTN. How are you, sir?
I am well. How are you?
Doing fine. We were talking about all kinds of things in the break, but the baseball, how Kevin's got his Nets hat on today, but I think he had his Mets hat on last week. We talked about you and I were wearing Reds gear, and then we cursed them, and they just went into the tank all of a sudden.
It's all our fault, man.
But I was just thinking of baseball because we started talking about Puig and Cueto and all these old names. I'm like, yeah, baseball is just. And then I started Puig because last year when he just ran into Pittsburgh's dugout and started that fight. That was just the greatest thing. He didn't care. There was like 20 people waiting on him. And I'm like, oh my God. Baseball is the funniest sport for that kind of antics, or antics, I should say. Baseball is the greatest antic sport of all time.
Well, I mean, that they sort of create their own circumstance with that, with all the silly unwritten rules that they have. You can't celebrate a home run. You can't steal second base if you're up eight runs or whatever. Whatever those silly rules are. It doesn't happen in other sports because other sports understand that it's not 1926. But that's kind of where we are. I think it's fading as more young players get in the game and want to bring a different ethic to it. And I totally support that. I think that the unwritten rules are foolish and in some cases dangerous. And the more we get away from that, the better baseball will be.
The one that I used to think was kind of, I don't know, funny is not the right word, but appropriate when I was younger, but no longer do, is when a guy hits one off of you, that next guy, he was in trouble, man. And it's like, now I'm like, well, why? It's your fault. Yeah, you just served it up. Either you served it up or he did a hell of a job. So why are you pissed? Just throw better pitches, man.
Yeah, exactly right. And of course, I think one of the things that helped get rid of that was just basic analytics. Was the idea that if you
put a man on base,
it's another base runner, and so there have been ways in which analytics have diminished the game of baseball, but that's certainly one that's maybe helped.
Yeah, Moneyball was that comes right to mind. Was they weren't the first to do that, but it is funny how sports have changed and analytics have become a part of that, and how Oakland tried to do something almost impossible, but it almost worked. I don't know if it almost worked because it was so new, but it's always going to be a part of things now.
Yeah, I think that there are ways in which it's impacted the game negatively, and I think the three true outcome nature of the game is I think that's a mistake. I look at a young player like India for the Reds, and I mean, he's not a big guy. He's not built like Mark McGwire, say. And I watched one of the games recently, and they had the shift on against him. And I'm like, how is this guy not trained to be able to knock the ball through the right side? I mean, he only weighs probably 180 pounds, if that. I mean, he may be able to hit the ball out of the park, and he did hit one last weekend. I mean, he's not going to make a living hitting 25, 30 home runs a game unless his body changes significantly. So why not be able to hit that ball through the opposite side? I think that's hurt baseball. And I wrote about this last fall during the playoffs, how much less the ball is in play. And when the ball's not in play, one, the games are longer, which isn't a positive. And two, there's less opportunity for something extraordinary to happen. I mean, Ozzie Smith in today's game might not be a Hall of Famer. I mean, because he wouldn't have enough opportunities to show how difficult it was to get the ball by him. I think that's not a positive for baseball. And I understand that the math says it's slightly better, but if you look at it historically, I mean, they're not scoring that many more runs now playing this way than they did 30 years ago playing the other ways. And what you also have to remember is everybody is playing this way now. So there are just as many teams losing playing this way as there are winning it. And I do wonder if the inefficiencies now might not be in the other direction, that no one is bold enough to attempt to explore.
Well,
everyone has to reinvent the wheel.
Exactly. So many hitters I noticed from watching baseball are working into deep counts, and it's obviously creating a lot of walks, but a lot of strikeouts too. A lot of strikeouts, and that's not good for the game either. In terms of
that's what I was talking about. I mean, that three true outcome. It's an out or it's a home run or it's a walk. I mean, that's That's not true. I mean, there can be value in some outs. I mean, not as great as value as hitting it out of the park. I get that, but there's a value in a sacrifice fly. There is a value in advancing the runner. That those things can't happen if you strike out. And I don't remember the exact number, but I know that the strikeouts are now over 9 per game. And in the 90s, I believe it was down around 5 or 6, something like that. I mean, that's a significant increase. And the ball being in play that much less often, like I said, not only is there value in some outs, but there's also potential excitement in those outs. The Reds versus Braves series, for as long as it lasted last year, there was almost no excitement in those games because guys were constantly striking out. I mean, we're talking about 15, 20 strikeouts that happened, and it really does diminish the flow, the excitement. It's such a static game now that it takes away from the entertainment value, and I think it hurts baseball with the next generation.
Yeah, the shift I get, but I've never understood why, because I watched so many times batters try to hit through it. I'm like, I understand. And I did see Joey Votto the other day hit through it. I was like, damn, they had to shift on, and he still got, and he hit it right at the second baseman who they dropped in the short right, and he hit it right at him. I don't know how he got it by him, but he did. But anyway, I'm like, lay it down the left side. Where it's wide open unless you have to have a hit to move someone. I get that, but I just don't understand. I'm like, lay it down. My God, there's nobody there. But yeah, who cares? It's just funny how it just seems like always trying to reinvent the wheel in things with sports. But we'll see how it turns around. The draft is coming up, Mike. Lots of talk about that. Quarterbacks is, of course, the big topic, as it usually is. Who's going to be that top guy? There's just been a kind of a cycle at the top and it's all guesswork because you talked about analytics a minute ago. There is nothing that uses more analytics than the NFL draft, I think, leading up to with the quarterbacks and the what's that test that they give the Wonderlic test?
Wonderlic, yes.
All this crazy stuff that they have you do. And the one thing it does, none of it measures is the heart. And that is an analytically driven process.
It's hard to judge quarterback play, how it will translate from one level to the next. It really is difficult. If you look at over the course of the last 25 years, 15 years, especially the last 15 years, as more teams have become more sophisticated in drafting. If you want a quarterback who's going to be a team changer, you almost certainly have to find him in the first round. Nearly, I mean, there are only a few Russell Wilsons in the history of the game. It's very rare, and obviously Tom Brady would be the greatest outlier ever. But that's not common. It wasn't common 30 years ago, and it's not common now. I mean, even then, Montana was a 3rd round pick. The vast majority of guys, I mean, Staubach, and the draft was a little different then, but Terry Bradshaw, those guys mostly were taken really high.
Yeah, even if you don't know about the guy before the draft, by the time the draft got there, he was in a smaller school. You knew about him. You're like, oh, you're very aware of him, and he's a distinct possibility.
Yeah, and I think that what we see now is that teams are searching for that player in the first round, but it's not even taking a first-round quarterback is not a guarantee he becomes that player. It's less than a 50-50 shot that you get that player, even if you take him in the first round. So you have to take your guy pretty much in the first round, but that's not a guarantee. Although I do think part of the reason, I mean, I use Sam Darnold as an example. I saw Darnold play in college in person. I saw him play a lot on television. I really liked what he had. And I do think that what's overlooked a lot of times is if you get into the wrong organization and you're handled badly, it doesn't matter how talented you are. The old thing about how have been if Roethlisberger had gone to the Browns had a good shot at him. They had a pick in advance of the Steelers, and they took a tight end, Kellen Winslow Jr., and that did not turn out great. And they missed on the opportunity to have Roethlisberger. But I don't know whether that organization at that period of time would have properly handled Roethlisberger and made him into a star. A lot of times it's where you go as much as what you're capable of.
Yeah, I saw that Justin Fields in the latest mock draft, they have him slipping all the way to 13th to the Bears. You talk about an organization that has trouble with quarterbacks, along with my Jets, of course. But it's you're right. It's it's a support stuff, or support around him, building around a quarterback, and that's what frustrated me so much with the Jets, beginning with Adam Gase. But you didn't give him any receivers. You let his best receiver in 2 years they had chemistry with leaving free agency and Robbie Anderson. And that's what you get. You that's not the way to nurture a quarterback. I mean, they went out and the Buffalo Bills went out and they got Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Kyler Murray. They went out, they got him DeAndre Hopkins, and that's what you have to do. You have to, support your quarterback with offensive line play, with receivers, with weapons, with guys that you can get the ball to.
Absolutely, good scheme, and also continuity is huge. The idea that you're not constantly having to readjust to a new offensive coordinator or a new head coach, those things matter too. And all of that goes into whether or not a quarterback succeeds. Aaron Rodgers slipped to 24th. Unbelievable. I still think, and I've been what I call a conscious football fan, understanding that the game's going on and who wins and loses and that sort of thing for 50 years, let's say. And in that time, I don't think I've ever seen anyone more physically gifted than Aaron Rodgers. But I still think that slip to 24, I think it was 24th overall. It was certainly late into the first round. And you remember that he was invited to the room and he was sitting there and the draft's going on and he's not getting picked. And I think it's the best thing that ever happened to him, because even though he had to sit and wait to start, he joined an organization that had a clue and had significant experience with a accomplished quarterback, and so he stepped right into that and was successful from the beginning. And I think that is a big part of why, even though he's incredibly gifted, I think a big part of why he's successful is that he joined the right organization.
Very similar to Dan Marino, remember, who slipped that day also. Same circumstance back in the 1980s.
Nope.
What?
The Steelers still lament. Steelers fans still lament the fact that they passed on the hometown kid. Went to high school in Pittsburgh, went to college in Pittsburgh, and was right there for the taking, and they screwed it up. So
how did that happen? I mean, how does that happen?
Well, there's a book, there's a book by Michael McCambridge. Chuck Noll's biography talked a lot about that, and there were a lot of rumors about Dan at that period of time, and what he was into, and those rumors. I think that again, modern drafting, I think they would have had a better handle on the truth, the veracity of those rumors, but it wasn't as sophisticated then, and nobody hired PIs and people like that to make sure that if there was a gifted guy that you think you had a shot at, you'd have a full dossier on him before you had to make that decision.
Well, there was that great 30 for 30 that Elway to Marino also, where apparently they did. They interviewed Art Rooney, and he called in the cop from the Pittsburgh PD and tried to find out if the rumors were true, and they told him not. But apparently, according to him, they said that Chuck Noll really wanted defense. They took Gabe Rivera, who was that great nose tackle, and tragically had that car accident 10 months later where he was paralyzed from the neck down.
Yeah, it was certainly a sad outcome for Gabe, and he's passed away since as well. Terrible tragedy for him. But those sorts of things happened in the draft in those days, and I think we still see some of that comes up. I mean, everybody remembers the Laramie Tunsil episode during the draft years ago. So even though those things can still come up even now, as late as draft day.
Mike, if you can stick around for a few minutes, we're going to take a quick break. I want to talk to you a little bit about Slick Leonard, because I don't think I've gotten to do that with you. And
Right.
I definitely want to do that. He's just in there, man. I can't get him out of there. But we'll be back with more from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios with Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
Welcome to your extraordinary.
My man Slick, did you see Dana's story with Brian Bras' brother, AJ?
I did not know.
Incredible. You know Brian Bras from IU?
He's not somebody I'm familiar with. No.
He works for the university. I forget what capacity, but it's not sports related, I think. But anyway, super, super nice guy. Has a brother, AJ, who is a quadriplegic. Like 5 years ago, they were reading him his last rites and this and that. And someone, they got a hold of Slick to come in. He loved Slick Leonard and brought him in. And Slick got there and says, all right, y'all get out of here. And Slick went in the room and just had a talk with him. And as soon as he left, he hadn't eaten anything in like weeks. It's just been Gatorade. He ordered some sandwich from McDonald's. And this was 5 years ago now.
Wow.
And he's still with us.
Wow.
Yeah,
It's
I read that.
awesome
That was a
story.
tremendous story.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I read it.
I
Also.
mean,
remember,
seriously, I'm like, I get chills every time I tell it.
That's an amazing story.
It is the cap on the Slick Leonard story. I mean, it is. I mean, because it hadn't been spoken about publicly until
Right.
he passed. What a dude. One of my greatest regrets. I never had the opportunity to meet him.
Right. Right.
True regret. Man. I wish he'd have been, I didn't know as much about him as I should have. And that's because when I was coming up, when I was younger, I was down in Southern Indiana by the Colonels, but I was too young to really know the other team. I knew who they were, but I didn't know who their people were. I knew who Artis Gilmore was, who Louis Dampier was, and who Dan Issel was, but I didn't know anything about the other people. I wish, gosh, I had. And IU, when I was at IU, that was not a name that's bannered about, because he is related more to the Pacers.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, the dude hit the winning free throw for a national championship here, and I did not know that. And I feel stupid, number one, but it's just wish I would have. Dealer for a reason. For deals like this, how about a new 2020 Honda Civic LX front-wheel drive lease for just $180 a month, or a new 2021 Honda Accord LX front-wheel drive lease for just $270 a month. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer.
Come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer. Welcome back to the Golf Club Eagle Point Studios here on this Tuesday. The great Mike DeCourcy joining us from Sporting News, and Kevin Brockway, as always, from CNHI Papers. Mike, one thing I don't think I've had the opportunity to talk to you about is the passing of Slick Leonard. And we've talked a lot with some other people about his impact. And I've kept thinking about it. And I'm like, man, I'm trying to think of someone who has had a bigger impact on athletics as a whole in this state. IU, the Pacers, the saving, the building, and everybody talks about that. We wouldn't have Banker's Life and probably wouldn't have had the NFL, but there's so much that goes back to Indianapolis being this little bird back in the 70s. And it is because you look at Louisville, who has desperately tried to get an NBA team. Nashville has gotten an NFL team. Louisville's still Louisville, and these other cities, Cincinnati, St. Louis, surrounded them. They're bigger. They're just grown, and all of them have professional teams.
Yeah, I think that having professional sports here is certainly a significant part of why Indiana Indianapolis is what it is. But when I think about Slick, I think about the fact that his career, his life really, it sort of defines the Indiana basketball experience in a lot of ways. I mean, Oscar Robertson was the greatest basketball figure that this state ever produced.
Right.
But Oscar left, and I understand why he left. I mean, I'm not
right.
Decision.
He was the greatest player of the state.
He's the greatest
doubt.
figure. Yeah, but he left and did most of his great things elsewhere in Cincinnati, in Milwaukee, etc. Slick grew up here. Was participated in the all class state tournament that was sort of the Hoosiers experience, and then he went to IU and defined the Hoosiers experience that way by winning a national championship, and then eventually comes to Indianapolis and wins multiple ABA titles with the Pacers, makes them a going concern in a lot of ways. The fact that they were as successful on the floor as they were was a big part of why they survived the merger. I mean, there were teams in bigger cities that didn't survive that merger. The ones that survived were often the ones that were successful on the floor. And I think the fact that he and obviously Roger Brown and Mel Daniels and others and Freddie Lewis made them successful as a team, but he was running the show, and that was and the fact that the Pacers were as good as they were and as successful as they were was a big part of why they were able to transition into the NBA, and transitioning to the NBA, I think, was the game changer for everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wish, as I was talking in the break, I knew or was more aware of him when I was younger, because I've gotten such an immense respect for him after learning all that I've learned about him. But I also wish that he would have had a little more relationship. Relationship's not the right word, but just notoriety from IU. I didn't. There was just not. But I think him and Bob Knight were at the same time, kind of a thing. And Slick turned this IU job down, I was told, as a matter of fact, also. So you got that. But those were, you talk about two different and dynamic personalities at the same time in this state within 60 miles of each other, coaching basketball. Holy crap. What a time. What a time. Yes. I wish I would have been, I was alive, but I wish I would have been coherent of that in the early 70s. Wow. Right.
Yeah. For me, I lived in Pittsburgh during the 70s. And so I obviously knew who Bob was and followed NCAA basketball. And I knew who Slick was because I followed the ABA. I remember Billy Knight played for the Pacers for a while. And Billy was from Braddock, Pennsylvania, which is where my dad worked. There's a big steel mill there, and that's where he worked. And then Billy played for Pitt. So Billy was someone that really was important to my growth in basketball when I was a teenager. And so I was obviously well aware of the Pacers. Freddie Lewis was from McKeesport, which is the next town over from where I grew up. So those things, connected me to an extent to the Pacers and to being aware of them. So I knew who he was and what he was accomplishing, but I don't think I knew until I moved here in 2014 what a beloved figure he was post coaching career. The announcing and Boom Baby and I didn't really have an awareness of all that until I moved here, and how wonderfully popular he was, what a great figure he was, and how he made his connection to this state's basketball last into his late 80s. Very sorry to see him go. One of the things that endeared him to me is I saw a story, I think on Channel 13 News here in Indy not long ago, where he sat with his wife and they talked about their relationship. It was a beautiful story. To be able to be that much in love, that many years later was a wonderful lesson. In addition to all that he, taught us and made us appreciate basketball, I think he got the whole deal. I think he had a good understanding that it goes beyond the court as well.
Absolutely. And more importantly, his background, much like Larry Bird's, who very similar, very, very similar. They're close friends, but his background, for him to achieve what he achieved with where he came from and the resources that he came, that is also mind-boggling. People need to, if you have any idea about him and any interest, you need to learn that, because it's again mind-boggling. His personality, it's like he was trained to be the greatest showman on earth, but he came from nothing to do that. So it's like self-made, but he surrounded himself with the right people. I mean, he was lucky to be embraced by the right people, whether that was Branch McCracken or his high school coach originally, actually. And his Branch McCracken took his place, I guess, as a father figure, had the right people around, which was fortunate for him. And man, he took it from there.
Yeah, take full advantage of the opportunities that develop for you because of your talents. And in his case, great high school player gets an opportunity to play at IU. What do you do with that opportunity? Well, I mean, he did everything possible with that opportunity. And I think that's an important thing. And in an era in which the college athletics experience is often questioned, I think that we're seeing with the number of players choosing to return for 5th and 6th years because of the extra year of eligibility granted to college basketball players. I think we're seeing a reminder that experience is of great value, that, and underappreciated value based on some reactions to it. I think that we're seeing that can create a lifetime of opportunity for you. And Slick would be a shining example of that. Obviously not everyone's going to have Slick's experience, because not everyone has Slick's wide variety of talents and that overwhelming, and I say overwhelming in the best sense, personality. Not everyone has that, but there's a place for a lot of people out there that go through the college athletics experience to have successful lives and careers.
Yep. What do you have coming up next, Mike?
I've got some draft stuff coming up. Working on a piece about the draft and where does one find Pro Bowlers in the draft, so to speak. It's got something on that, and then a little look at what the Steelers are going to do. And also, I have this afternoon Chelsea, the London club in the Premier League, plays Real Madrid, maybe the most famous and powerful of all soccer teams in the Champions League semifinals. And one of Chelsea's key players is an American born in Hershey, PA, Christian Pulisic, and he has a very good chance to start for them today. If he's in the lineup for Chelsea, it'll be a big moment for U.S. soccer. No American, no U.S. national team player has started a Champions League game since 2005 at the semifinal level. So that would be huge. And I've got an article about that that posted late yesterday and is up there now, and you can find it on my Twitter.
Make sure you go there and give him a follow at TSN Mike. I cannot thank you enough for joining us, man. I was just looking at soccer. What I mentioned earlier, I forget who it was now because I just moved off that page, but someone lost like $64 million in a COVID, just in the quarter because of COVID last year.
That sounds like probably Real Madrid, which is why the whole soccer world was nearly turned on its head last week. But obviously not having fans in stadiums is a significant impact for everybody in professional sports. And soccer feels it more because without a salary cap, they spend a lot of money on players and player acquisitions and all the rest.
Yep. Mike, thank you for joining us. Taking around a little extra today. Talk to us. Appreciate you, brother.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Jim. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. The great Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, Big Ten, and Fox. Make sure you give him a follow at TSN Mike for his stories. Chronic is going to join us at the top of the hour, but he's already here, so let's stick him on. Chronic, go ahead and jump in if you want.
Hey, coming at you live from the pharmacy here today, apparently.
You getting your shot?
No, I already got my shot, man. I got the J&J one-hitter quitter here about a month ago, so I'm fully vaccinated, but as luck would have it, about a month and a half ago, my dog ate a pound of Sour Patch Kids, gave himself diabetes, so now we give him insulin every day.
Are you kidding me?
I shit you not. Excuse the language.
So they have to. I mean, the dog has full on diabetes now.
He absolutely destroyed his pancreas, put his kidney
Wow.
and liver into failure. We had to. One of the neighbor kids left a bag of candy out. He helped himself to it, and about $7,000 later, he's now diabetic, and I'm waiting in line for an order that never got placed.
That is well. First of all, I didn't know dogs could get diabetes. So there's a learning point. I'm going to have to knock down on something you learn every day. But moving forward onto the sports world, Indiana basketball continuing to move in the recruiting. Everything is toward the future now, Chronic, because this roster is, I'm not going to say it's set because it's not set, but it's filled, and it's filled to capacity. Someone is going to be sitting out next year because they're one over already. But they're continuing to recruit for the future. I just saw Jeremy Fears. They're recruiting into the 2023 class. So they are getting ahead of the game.
Yeah, Mike Woodson and his staff wasted no time addressing a lot of issues, getting the scholarship situation filled up. And as you mentioned, they're actually overtime next year by one. So be curious to see how that shakes out. But I suppose it's better than alternative, where a lot of people fear there wouldn't be enough warm bodies once the season starts. Now there's abundance of talent and there's a depth of talent. Most important.
I think we're losing the Chronic sound a little bit there, but yeah, Kevin, and they are really being aggressive. Indiana has not been this. We're not aggressive in this previous administration. They have been extremely aggressive. Now they used to throw offers out, but I think there was a big difference between before throwing offers out, and they have a group of guys that are out on their recruiting trail, actually being active. And Mike Woodson is one of them, which is most importantly. Dane Fife is one of them, which is very important. I don't know that they had that before.
Yeah, and in talking to Tamar Bates, I'm working on a story on him for tomorrow. Just the personality and the fact that multiple coaches kind of came at him with a pitch. I think he was very impressed with that, and he thinks the roster's pretty good. He thinks that there's a chance for them to really move up the standings and compete for a championship, which is, a little surprising considering where Indiana was last year at 12-15. But you bring back Chase Jackson Davis, you bring back Race Thompson. I think there's a feeling of optimism that this thing could possibly turn kind of quickly, and Tamar Bates wants to be a part of that. So, you bring in Miller Kopp, you're bringing in a lot of shooting, which was a big bugaboo. You get the shooting with this team, it just opens up so much more for Race and Trace inside. You can just get guys that can make open looks, and that's going to be the key to, the key to everything, really. In terms of IU, and shooting can come and go, as we know, but at the end of the last season, it was just abysmal, and that's why they went on the tailspin they did.
Chronic?
No, absolutely. I mean, and it's one of those situations where it appears these guys are willing to compete. And as we mentioned last week, the message it sends to everybody on the existing roster, you better show up because there's guys coming for your minutes right now. And that's something that perhaps wasn't necessarily present in rosters past, especially at the guard level. And for a team that struggled so mightily on both ends of the floor with its guard play, to address that this quickly, this effectively, I think is a great omen for what's to come with the staff. There's got to be something to be said for guys that are willing to commit when they know it's not a given. And I don't know that that's always been the case at Indiana, that, guys were brought in under the assumption you're going to have to earn those minutes. And there's guys that are more experienced, that have more time in this system than you do, that are currently in that spot. So if you want those minutes, you're going to have to come in and take them. And that's exactly the mindset I think you need to be recruiting from this point forward. But as we said before as well, every recruit a shooter. That's got to be the case, especially in Coach Woodson's new offense.
And they're 3 deep at point guard right now, and a true point guards. If you think about it, 2 years ago, I mean, you had Finney and you had Devontae Green and Al Durham, who weren't really true point guards. You are 3 deep now at true point guard, where you can bring a guy in and you're pretty comfortable with him and his ability to handle the ball. And that's something that they have not had the last couple of years.
No, I've said it long. If you're a combo guard, you're neither a point guard or a shooting guard for the most part. Indiana was pretty deep in combo guards, but pretty ineffective at the point position as well as the shooting spot. So to bring in true point guards, to bring in some true shooting guards, I think should do wonders for the efficiency in the offense as well.
Yeah, and as we look forward to now the NFL draft coming up, we talked about that a little earlier, Chronic. Jamar Johnson continues to try to sneak up the draft board while Fillier's up there as well. So hopefully to hear those guys' names, because it always helps the program. And even though the program is doing really, really well, not a lot of guys are out of that yet, because those groups are probably going to be hitting the draft in the next year or 2 years, 3 years. Those numbers are going to climb a lot over the next 2 to 3 years of Indiana kids that you're going to be hearing in this NFL draft. I promise you, over the next 3 years, every year is going to be more. Next year, it will be more than 2. The following year, more than that, as these numbers continue to go up with the talent coming in.
No, it's the best part about being an IU football fan right now is for all the success they've had recently. It's durable right now. They've got so much returning talent on both sides of the football coming back, and will continue to here for the next couple of years. And as we've seen here in the last week, it doesn't look like they're letting up on the recruiting trail, restocking those shelves either, as far as increasing Indiana's overall talent level on both sides of the ball. So Tom Allen continues to roll.
We got to take a quick break. We'll be back with more from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios right after this. Hey, Hoosier fans, whether you're looking for a new or Chronic, I don't know if you can stick around or not.
Well, I'm still waiting for an order that was supposed to have been ready yesterday,
cool.
But until they call my name, this is
cool.
Unbelievable. That's the other problem when you're trying to fill a script for a dog. Whose name, whose birthday? What are we even talking about here?
Oh, wow. Wow.
I was dying laughing at that diabetes stuff. I know y'all can't hear me in the background, but that was hilarious.
I was like, what?
Yep. We this is a dog who, from the time he was 6 years or 6 months old, was eating rocks and sticks. Can I pay for this here too?
Oh, geez.
And so we assume
that sounds like a kid.
2418. Yeah, he is like a kid. Except unfortunately, apparently candy can just about kill him.
Diabetes from a pound of Sour Patch Kids.
Oh man.
I was like, what?
That's rough.
He was 133 before this. He's now a svelte 102 in a matter of 5 weeks.
Yeah, my girlfriend's dog is over 100 pounds also. He's like a lab wolfhound mix.
Yeah, this is a black lab.
Black lab, yeah.
I saw this PFF draft just put this tweet out that Jamar Johnson has a 31.7 passer rating allowed since 2019. That is first among draft eligible safeties.
There you go.
Now, he's one of the best DBs in the entire class, no doubt.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Have a good day.
You think Wap will go too, huh, Jim?
Later. He's not.
Maybe 6 or 7.
Man, I don't know.
Jerome Johnson, too. He might go. He could be another one that could get his name called.
I just don't think Wap brings enough.
Wap really struggled last year with all the added attention that he was getting from the secondaries.
Yeah. I mean, that,
All right, we're back in 20 seconds.
Is to visit, to stay, to dine, and to play. We offer an up-close animal encounter with elephants and giraffes, lodging that is out of this world, world-class golfing, and a premier resort experience that is waiting for you on your next visit to French Lick.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sellersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry. Welcome back to the Golf Club Eagle Point Studios here on this Tuesday. Chronic Hoosiers with us. Kevin Brock, of course, of CNHI Papers, and I'm Jim Coyle. I just saw a tweet out, guys, that Jamar Johnson, as we've talked about him continuing to move up the draft board, has a 31.7 passer rating allowed since 2019, and that is first among draft-eligible safeties. That gets you some attention. Kevin?
Nah, absolutely. There's little doubt. We saw Indiana fans that paid attention. They've seen it in abundance. He's just an absolute beast in the defensive backfield. Guy can lay the wood. He's got great eyes. He knows how to read the ball. Knows how to read routes.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kevin, it continues to that is great news for Jamar. As I said, that's good news for Indiana, but their numbers are going to just go up in this draft as the years pass now, because they have the talent. Not only is the talent growing, but the developed talent is growing. And when you have both of those, your numbers are just going to go up. You just saw, we haven't even talked about the fact of this triple crown of recruiting that Tom Allen just landed with the McCullough brothers.
Yeah, the McCullough brothers, and one transferring from Miami, Ohio, and Bloomington South is going to have a heck of a squad next year, because those two younger kids are going to go to Bloomington South. I mean, they're both going to be really good. One of them a top 100, that with the highest recruit ever for IU, if that serves me correct, based on all these reports. He's kind of a linebacker, running back, the kid that's going to be a senior, the McCullough kid, in high school. So that's going to be a huge boon. But you think about the drafts in the coming years. Michael Penix, Micah McFadden, Tywan Mullen. Those guys are all going to, Ty Freifogel, those guys are all going to go, probably in these next couple of drafts in the coming years as well. So it's going to be fun to watch the next few years in terms of there's this real window here, I think, these next 2 or 3 years for IU, to win a Big Ten championship. And but you got to take advantage of it. You got to keep Michael Penix healthy, and you got to, guys have to continue to develop and perform. You got to continue to build depth.
Well, that time could be now if Michael Penix does indeed come back completely healthy. They have what I think that they need to do that, and they're in a position to do that. But we shall see.
By 2-year window, I mean next season and the following season. I think
right.
Years. Yeah, that you have right now that you can really – with Tywan Mullen and Micah McFadden as well, and some other guys on the defensive side of the ball that are really standouts and the best at their positions right now in the league.
Absolutely. And then on the basketball side, recruiting, as we move forward, we talked about earlier, shooting has been the biggest issue, and they really seem to be emphasizing with that guard play. There's a lot of guards that the names have been batted around. So shooting, obviously something that they plan to get taken care of.
And, Miller Kopp, too, a guy that can kind of stretch the defense a little bit forward, that can stretch the defense as well. So really shooting at all positions. And, and it's going to be interesting to see how much work they put into Trace Jackson Davis over the summer, how much work they put into Race Thompson over the summer, to even get them to the point where they can be a little more comfortable in that 15 to 17 footer, even at the 3-point line, to open up the defense. That's just the way the game is being played right now, and it opens up driving lanes, and it just makes things a lot easier to operate. And for many years under Archie Miller, Indiana's the lanes were just too clogged to be able to operate and to be effective down there.
Absolutely. Chronic, what do you have coming up next, man? What's going on next with you, my friend?
Well,
Chronic, is he still out there?
Hey. No, I just connected back to a Wi-Fi network, and I think I lost you there for a second.
Oh, perfect. There we go.
I am back. No, we are. We're getting ready to cut a new pod for Mind Your Banners next week post vacation. So looking forward to get back with Zach and talk about some of these new developments. Other than that, just barreling towards the end of another school year here in Bloomington, getting ready for everybody's favorite season. B-Town Summer's right around the corner.
Yep, the students are about to be leaving here in the next week or so. He was referencing Zach Osterman, who I've got to get Zach on. He was on vacation a couple weeks ago and was going to have him on. I haven't had him on yet, so got to reach out to him as well. So make sure you're looking for that, their next pod, and we will be, brother. And I can't thank you enough, as always.
Hey, thanks for having me. We'll catch you guys next week.
Looking forward to it. Ronnie Hoosier joining us here on Indiana Sports
There will
Beat.
be graduation ceremonies, right, now this year, too? It's going to be like one per family or something? Or?
One person per family? Yeah, that's a great question. Well, why would you not? You're going to be in the football stadium. You have masks on. I mean, there's no reason not to do that. But
I felt bad for my godson because last year he graduated from Boston College. They didn't have anything because of COVID, and that's unfortunate. The timing, you miss things like that and so forth, and it's hard.
Yeah, dog diabetes though.
That's hard too, man.
That's just a new one on me, man. I'm just, but yeah. As we move forward now, the sports are continuing. I just noticed yesterday there were football scores. I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot about that. There's football going on right now. I'm like, I haven't seen a football game yet, which is kind of amazing because I'm like, I would think they would be really pushing these games to watch for people, but I maybe they are, and I've just missed it because I've been doing other things, but I haven't seen a lot of promotion for those. There is some spring football for conferences that were out west that didn't play in the fall, but we've got NCAA soccer coming up. Indiana baseball just swept Minnesota. They are trying to get into the NCAA. They did not have when they got swept by Ohio State, that really put a chink in their season, and they're fighting to get back from that. They had a great weekend outing against Minnesota. I saw earlier, I think they scored like 39 runs, and the pitching had a great outing. I don't know. They're going to have to struggle to catch up. I think they're still 2.5 games behind of getting into that spot. But soccer, on the other hand, completely different story, as they will move forward to do what they always do, play in the NCAA tournament. I think this is the 39th consecutive time, just going off of memory. Kevin, there have been like 43 or 4 college cups, and they have been in 20 of them or something like that. It's astounding.
We've got
numbers.
We've got a Zoom later on with Coach Yegley, and it will be interesting to see. And they've got that bubble environment set up where they're going to be in North Carolina. I believe their first game is actually at UNC Wilmington on Sunday. They're going to face the winner of Milwaukee and St. Francis Brooklyn, but the number 3 overall seed. And obviously you've got a really great scorer in Becerra, and also the goalkeeper has played really well, and they've only had 3 goals in 11 games, so it's that formula of the defense. But Spencer Glass being out is going to hurt him, in terms of the defense a little bit too, and him suffering that broken leg for Michigan. It'll be interesting to see if we get any kind of update today on if there is any possible last gasp chance that he could, come back later in the playoffs.
The fact that they're doing what they're doing without Spencer Glass, that's amazing. It's utterly amazing. I mean, he is one of the top players in the country, and it's really sad that they don't have him, because this is a team that without question has national title capabilities. Not having Spencer Glass is definitely going to make that much more difficult, because Victor Becerra has been the guy. A lot more has been placed on his shoulders. He's been taking most of the shots. He took all of the shots in the Big Ten championship, I think, whatever game that was. But it's going to be difficult to win a national title without Spencer Glass, but we'll see.
No question. Yeah, they haven't done it since 2012, so maybe now is the time. Sometimes you get some breaks, and as with any tournament, it's the same thing with the NCAA basketball tournament too. It's you kind of got to be in it, like as Chris Beard said, got to get in the fight. And if you get in every year, sometimes you catch breaks. Sometimes certain teams will surprise and win, and maybe it makes your path a little bit easier to get to where you want to go. So it'll be an interesting journey for IU starting this Sunday.
Yep, and then there's a lot of Indiana's not the only team out there working over this summer. We've got this transfer portal out there. You've got a lot of new coaches and a lot of new places. Chris Beard's down in Texas. Shaka's up at Marquette. I'm trying to think. No coaching, one coaching change in the Big Ten, right? Penn State?
Yeah, well, and of course IU, yeah.
Well, right, obviously. But I mean, other than outside of here.
And Minnesota.
Oh, there's Minnesota. It's right. Who did I did not follow that hire. Who did Minnesota get hired?
They promoted the assistant, a guy named Ben Johnson.
I noticed that Jamal Mashburn Jr. followed Patino out to New Mexico.
Yep, and Marcus Carr is gone. Has Marcus Carr landed at Kentucky? There was rumors that he was going to go there.
I have not seen him where he's landed anywhere. So if he's still out there looking, what about the kid that was at Texas, Mike McClung? Has he landed anywhere? He was rumored for potential Kentucky as well.
Yeah, they're talking about him for Florida also. Apparently, Florida is in on him. So we'll see. We'll see where he ends up. I'm looking up Marcus Carr now. I do not see any imminent news on him on where he's going to end up. But obviously, here's something. Could Minnesota's Marcus Carr be the answer to Kentucky basketball's point guard search? And that was from.
Well, yeah, but who's that by? Fansided or something?
No, Louisville Courier-Journal. Speaking of Kentucky, I know you probably alluded to this, but what about their volleyball national championship? How about that?
Oh, did they end up winning it? I didn't see.
They
it.
won.
So
they won the volleyball national championship. First SEC team to win a volleyball national title. And if you remember last year, didn't IU beat Kentucky last year? Right? Didn't they go down there
in Lexington? In Lexington.
So maybe
Great
that bodes
point.
well for the future of Chris Ash's program. You know,
or Steve Aird's.
Steve Ayers, rather. I'm sorry. Chris Ash. Thinking of Rutgers.
But yeah, how'd you pull that one out? Yeah, that it is. They went down there and beat Kentucky at Kentucky. So
a year ago.
And that team is not as talented as the one they have of talent that they have coming in. So yeah, that's another great. We've talked about the programs at Indiana coming around. Didn't even mention volleyball. That's another one. But we got to take a break. We got more coming up for you. Here from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, Indiana Sports Beat returns right after this. Brought to you by Andy Moore Honda. Hey, Hoosier fans, whether you're looking for a new...
If Steve Ayers listens, he'll be upset with me with that one.
He's not listening to this.
No.
He's busy, man.
He is busy. He's
Jim,
a good dude.
sorry
Actually.
earlier, I didn't figure out how to mute. I didn't realize you can mute everybody else's mic on StreamYard. I only thought you could do it through Spreaker, but next time I'll take care of that for you sooner than I did.
It's all right. Yeah, I was like, man, that's getting bad.
Yeah. I don't know what was going on with him.
He wasn't on Wi-Fi.
I thought it sounded like It sounded like almost like a phone call.
It was. He wasn't. Well, he was not on Wi-Fi. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
When you're not on Wi-Fi, there's no difference. You have to use the link.
Well, I mean, he's using the link. He's just using it not on Wi-Fi.
Holy Jacamos. Tony's diagnosed with diabetes back in 96, but not brought about by eating a pound of Sour Patch Kids. Yeah, I believe that, my man. My mom did too.
Yeah, it's rough. Diabetes is rough. My grandmother had type 2. Well, you know, that's interesting. I did the story last year about Harry Kreider has type 1 diabetes. The juvenile diabetes.
Oh, yeah.
And he's going to be going into the NFL. There's also a tight end from the Ravens that has type 1 diabetes. So it's a little scary with COVID. You got to be really careful. Because if you get COVID with diabetes, that's not good news.
I would imagine.
Remember Wilford Brimley, the commercials? Diabetes.
He just had a funny way of saying stuff.
Diabetes.
I think the funniest thing is when he was in that movie, The Firm.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, so good. When he takes him down the river, that's the best. Yeah.
Oh, he's got those pictures. Pictures.
Stressful times, and it's important to also practice good
I'll do my
self-care.
best to protect
It's
you.
normal to feel overwhelmed, anxious, or afraid, but there is hope. Reach out to someone, connect with your friends, stay in touch with your community, and know that you are not alone. Learn more at wearebroadcasters.com/hope, furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer.
Welcome back to the Golf Club, Big Point Studios on this Tuesday. Kevin Brockway from CNHI and Jim Coyle with you as always. Tim just asked, why does college baseball not have an AP top 25 poll? Well, Mr. AP, why don't you tell me that?
No, they have Baseball America does. They do it through that. There's a top 25 poll, but it's not through Baseball America or collegiate baseball. Those are the two. But probably not enough interest to get AP voters because it's hard to get. How many actual beat writers are they for some of the major programs like Florida? We staffed a lot of their games, a lot of the SEC games. But I guess John Blau does the Indiana baseball games, doesn't he, for Bloomington?
No, it's I see John Price. He's out when I was at the soccer. I was at the soccer game and I saw Price there for the Herald Terror. So, but there are too many teams. I think the AP focuses on basketball and college football. Yeah. Baseball is not. There are too many divisions and leagues, and there's services out there, and it is easier for them to allow services that focus on that sport. Yeah, to do that.
And Baseball America and Collegiate Baseball, they're both really good. Kendall Rogers, I know he's unbelievable. I've actually interviewed him for stories over the years when I covered a lot of Florida stuff, baseball. I've been to 4 College World Series, and that's a great event. That's an unbelievable event, and definitely should be on your bucket list. But, hopefully Indiana under Mercer, maybe they'll get there within the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. You never know. I mean, Michigan was in the finals 2 years ago, right? So,
but that was the year that Indiana won the Big Ten.
And that was the year Indiana won the Big Ten, but they kind of flamed out in regionals, right? And they lost to they flamed out in the Big Ten tournament, and then they lost to Louisville.
Yep. But just we enter into the summer. There are a lot of stuff coming up. You got the Kentucky Derby this weekend. Don't forget about. There was too much going on. I'm not going to go down and cover that. We also have the Indianapolis 500 coming up this month. So we're back to a normal sports schedule of sorts. I just finished watching Talladega last night. A race from Sunday, actually. And then the AAU circuit. Back in line last week, we had Westfield going up in Fort Wayne, down in Atlanta. So we've got that going now, and we'll be continuing to follow that and cover that. Tim mentions 39 runs to 5 on a sweep over Minnesota this weekend. Yep, they sure did. And so, but yeah, the summer schedule kicking in. But it's not a resting time, unfortunately. There's stuff that just continues to happen, and you just move from, especially this season, when you did not get to have it last season. There's just so much anticipation for these kids, these coaches, these leagues to get back into the gym, to get back to these leagues, to get back to some normalcy. And to get back to, there are so many things that are askew right now. We've talked about the classes, the added class because of COVID, all that stuff. I don't know how long it's going to take to work this stuff out, Kevin.
Yeah, and you've got the Indiana All-Stars too in early June. You've got a lot of the Pacers are fighting for a playoff spot. So you could have them in the playoffs in June as well. So there's a lot that's happening, and the interesting impact of the transfer portal too, in regards to high school recruiting. Are these kids getting as much love as they were getting before, as the trend shifts to ready-made players? As I pointed out in my story last week regarding the transfer portal, you look at Baylor, national championship team, 5 of the top 8 players in the rotation, all transfers, and that's the new model now. Is the trend is to go out and get the ready-made player instead of getting the high school recruit. That's got to impact recruiting in a way in terms of some of these younger guys too, and how many phone calls or how much love they're getting, because there's just a lot more of the unknown of the high school kid coming into college. But and talking to Tamar Bates too yesterday, another interesting thing that he said was he wanted to be very careful in the recruiting process, because when he commits and he wants to be a guy that's not in the transfer portal in a year or two. So, but you never know. I mean, it's all good and good to say now. Let's see what happens. If he competes and doesn't get the minutes that he wants, but you'd like to see more of that, and I think it's good for the sport if you see more of these kids kind of stick it out and be 3 or 4 year players, and maybe that trend will reverse itself in the next 5 years. Because right now it's just kind of mercenary. And what do you say 10 or 20 years ago? What school did I go to? I went to Indiana, Gonzaga, Northwestern. It's like
yeah. So what did what's his thoughts on the change here? What's he looking forward to? What sold him? How that conversation, or just piece. Don't bust your story up. Just drop some dimes.
No, I think what sold him was the coaching staff and how they connected with him as a person, more than even basketball. That really sold him, and also he feels like it's a place. It kind of surprised me when he said this, but he says this feels like a place where you can win a national championship, and it does have the tradition, and you do have that support system, but at the same time, 12 and 15, it does seem like a long way off. But maybe I think all players feel like they can change it, and we have seen in college basketball or all college sports that sometimes it can take just a special group to be able to turn around that quickly.
Matt asked, does the portal have a close date for 2021 season? Well, that's a unique question. I don't know the answer to it. I'm going to be honest with you, because now with I would think that there has to be something, and I'm going to have to research it to find out. But when you've added the instant eligibility, I wonder if there is a timeline.
Yeah, because they're going to vote on that on the 28th, which is coming up in a few days. With regards to the 1 year exemption. So once that gets through, and it's expected to get through, then I think you're going to see it get even worse in terms of the player movement. It's just going to be nuts, and it's expected to pass, and it's going to be it's going to be open season, and I think you'll see even more people kind of go in there, and we'll see how that impacts IU as well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, but the portal, again, I need to dig into that, but that is a great question, and it opens up other questions. How late can you leave a team and go to a new team? I mean, could you, as late as August 31st, leave and transfer to another school? I mean, I would imagine it had to be before or after the schools, before or after semesters. You have to be able to register for school.
Yeah, enrollment processes, I think, have to be followed. They have to go through. You have to have like an enrollment situation. But a lot of schools have like a 2-week window to register for classes past the first semester. So you could theoretically, like you said, if the semester starts on August 22nd, you could go all the way up to the first week of September if you have a 2-week period to register for classes, where you could have that waiting period.
Yeah, it's been. I'm going to study that a little more. I haven't spent that much time on that because there's been so much going on, and it's so new. I mean, it just keeps changing. But those questions keep coming up. But they're a good one. Let's see. It has to be. What's Tim say? It has to be before students have to get registered for the school year. Yeah, well, that's what we were saying. It would make sense.
But that registration process, like I said, it can it can go into that first semester.
Yeah. So again, how late is too late before you? Because there's always late registration into classes by students, and that's the same for anybody else. So, so there that is. Hey, we're getting close. Another great show today with Mike DeCourcy. So much to talk about today, man. The NFL draft coming up, Indiana baseball doing well, soccer about to hit the tournament. Yeagley is coming up.
Another in-state question, albeit the rival school Purdue, but he's also a New Albany kid. You think Rondale Moore goes in the first round?
What is he projected?
No, I mean
he hasn't been seen. He hasn't been seen enough. But I think his talent is raw. But what position? He's not a big guy. He's not going to be a receiver. He's again that hybrid.
I mean, he's 5'7", 5'8". I mean, he's a little guy, but I mean, you see guys like Tyreek Hill, Deshaun Jackson. Those speed guys can do really well. Vertical
out of the backfield.
I saw, and he can, that's why the Jacksonville Jaguars, Urban Meyer would find creative ways to use him as kind of like that hybrid running guy, you know what I mean, that you can run on kind of those jet sweeps and stuff.
We'll certainly find out on Thursday, won't we?
Yeah, no, I mean, he'll be an interesting guy. He's a borderline first, second round guy.
Yep, we'll be looking forward to it, man. Well, I can't thank you enough. Cannot thank Mike DeCourcy enough, and of course, Chronic Hoosier. But most importantly, it's you guys. Without you all, there is nothing for us to do. But we appreciate everybody showing up as you do, your comments and everything else. Make sure you sign up at Indiana Sports Beat Radio on YouTube so we can keep that coming to you. And until tomorrow, for Kevin, what you got coming up tonight or today, rest of the week?
Yeah, no, like I said, I got the thing on Tamar Bates, draft coverage all week, as well as, IU soccer as well, and some stuff, football contract stuff also. Assistant coach.
Sounds great. And we'll be back tomorrow, of course. Dylan Sim, Cal Ned and Rip, Bob Kravitz. We'll see what else we can get scared up. Until then, for Kevin and Mike and Chronic, I'm Jim Coyle. Do something nice for somebody. Please wear your mask. And until tomorrow, I will see you on the radio.